Dragon, a 2006 fantasy movie made by Asylum Pictures. Asylum Pictures, of course, very famous for making a variety of mockbusters. However, this one is an original story. I guess you could argue maybe it's kind of influenced by the release of the sort of Lord of the Rings movies. Nevertheless, I will point out before this review, this is actually an extremely low budget movie. It's only $500,000 budget, so it's actually very, very ambitious for such a low budget. And it's going to come into a factor that I think is very important for this movie. So the story here is basically you have a princess who is trying to go to a diplomatic mission to a neighbouring kingdom to try and sort of rally support for basically the war against humans versus these sort of dark elves. And the dark elves have got destroying this princess's kingdom, and her only hope is to try and sort of have some kind of alliance with the neighbouring kingdom. And on the way, she basically encounters a variety of different hero types. You've got a couple of knights, a group of barbarians, a sorceress, a fae. And they have to travel to this sort of curted forest, trying to avoid these dark elves and trying to avoid and ultimately face down with this sort of large dragon that is kind of, was interestingly created as a kind of a weapon of mass destruction against the elves, which I thought was kind of a nice little twist there. So that's the basic premise here. Now, obviously, when you have a fantasy movie, they're normally extremely sort of high budget affairs. I mean, even if you look at the lower budget movies, they normally sort of cost, even the other Asylum ones, they're about $1 million. So this one, at $500,000, is ambitious, shall we say. But I have to say, I think this one succeeds in other sort of areas where sometimes the slightly higher budget ones can sometimes fail. And I think the main reason here is it actually puts together some interesting characters, and it's fairly well acted. I mean, they kind of try and speak sort of old English, and you know, so it comes across sometimes the sort of accents that some of the actors puts on is a little bit cheesy, especially kind of I guess the main sort of barbarian guy. But for the most part, the actual characters are actually quite interesting. So not all of them, admittedly. Some of them are a little bit underdeveloped, but some of the characters, one of the knights, Artemis, for example, I found, you know, a very likeable character and had some quite sort of amusing chemistry with some of the other characters. I guess a criticism I would say for myself is that the main sort of female lead as such, which is this kind of princess, we're kind of meant to believe she's this kind of like this prophesized one and this sort of brave and noble woman. But to be honest, until the very, very end of the film, she's constantly getting rescued and is not proactive at all, to be quite honest. So that's, I guess, a criticism in the movie. Building up this kind of relationship, this kind of this fellowship, trying to sort of get across this land, and that's I guess the other issue is there's a lot of talking in this movie, and the action is a little bit few and far between, and pretty much the majority of this movie, this kind of band of mixed sort of different sort of fantasy sort of archetypes, kind of bickering and kind of trying to sort of develop relationships and ultimately squabbling and such, rinse and repeat. The kind of sorceress is, I guess, the kind of most interesting to look at. She's kind of got the sort of like the white contact and everything, and she's kind of a staple of these. The actress who plays her, Eliza Swenson, I think his name is pretty much a staple of these sort of Asylum picks. But overall, I actually quite liked it for the kind of considering it's such a low budget. Now that's the other thing you're going to be wary of this film. It is such a low budget. It is some of the sort of the technical stuff that they have on display here. Simply the way it's shot, obviously the effects. Obviously the dragon is completely CGI, and you know it airs on the side of sort of cheap cartoon-looking CGI. Some of the battles are not particularly well staged, and kind of the editing as well. Again, it's all poor. But it's all stuff basically because this budget is so low. And I always think, you know, if you're going to have such a low budget, is it really wise to sort of tackle a sort of subject matter which requires a bigger budget? But I have to say, for the budget that they have, I think they've done probably the best job that you would actually be able to expect. If you're a fantasy movie fan and you've watched stuff like, you know, the Lord of the Rings movies or stuff like that, or even the kind of the Conan movies, this is going to sort of pale in comparison to anything like that. But I think if you're if you like those sort of cheesy like Ator movies, for example, then this is kind of reminds me like that. But the strength of it is, I'd say, I think the characters and the actors in it. I'm going to give this movie a 6 out of 10. It's certainly not going to be for everyone. If you require a little bit more finesse and a little bit more of a sort of sharpened feel to it, you may not like this video and just think it's a cheaper piece of rubbish. But if you can kind of look past the budget and kind of, you know, try and see what they've done past that, I think some people may get a kick of it. So 6 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think? Leave me a comment and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.